Okay, let's move on to our next PlayStation 5 Pro question, or other questions, because we've had a number of them which are basically asking the same thing. Let's go through a few of them. Snorlax Jobless asks, do you believe that the Sony Interactive slash AMD initiative rules out AMD as the next Xbox chipset? Or is this like the Cell PowerPC where the engineers will end up using one's own tech enhancements with the other company? A bespoke exclamation point, nice handle there, says, with Mark Cerny confirming a deeper partnership with AMD, do you think this is confirmation that Microsoft has ditched AMD for next gen? I can't see Sony wanting AMD to share their work with Xbox. And there have been rumours that the Surface team is now also the Xbox hardware team, so using ARM and a variation of those quote-unquote Surface tops they just released would allow them to launch quote-unquote early. It would definitely make more work for you guys, but also much more exciting questions. I like this bit. Rich! Exclamation point. You don't take the lead on any questions, so would you like to take point on this one? Not really. Paul Calamata asks, how do you think Sony's hardware development partnership with AMD through Amethyst may impact Microsoft's next generation hardware development plans? Could this push Microsoft towards seeking an alternative hardware partner to AMD? Or could they potentially be using a chip that powered by tech that was partially developed and owned by Sony? I think this was actually a question that was raised by one of the other outlets that interviewed Mark Cerny, and Mark didn't really seem too bothered about whether it was in an Xbox or not. But if I do want to take the lead on this question, even though Oliver is better equipped to answer it, I would say that Microsoft are still going to stick with AMD. It just makes sense on many levels. But Oliver, what do you make of all of this? I don't think you can rule out Microsoft using AMD. I'd say it's quite likely at this point, even though there would be a great deal of potential plus points to potentially using NVIDIA.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'd love it if Microsoft took a bit of a left turn in the console ecosystem. I guess, well, not too much of a left turn because Nintendo is going down the same path, but picking NVIDIA for a high-performance box, that would be really exciting. There are a lot of really compelling technologies that NVIDIA already has brought to the table, and it sounds like will be bringing to the table that leave them some years ahead of their competitors. I'd have to judge there. But no, I think the next Xbox will be AMD. It's hard, I'd imagine, for anyone else to guarantee backwards compatibility. I think that's critical. With this stuff with Sony and Microsoft and AMD, I think Sony is probably fine with contributing as long as they feel like they have a competitive edge over Microsoft in other respects. And I think here that the next Xbox probably won't be trying to compete with Sony as directly as prior Xboxes did. So whatever issues there are there won't be as much friction between the two vendors. And then also you have to think about this in a holistic way. And over time, we've already had 2 generations of Sony and Microsoft drinking from the same trough there with AMD. So certainly they're no strangers to there possibly being some cross-pollination between those designs. And it has not affected their enthusiasm for continuing to go with AMD for subsequent products. So I think in this case, it's going to be AMD for the next Xbox.
Interesting. I mean, thinking about it, John, you and I interviewed Microsoft's lead architect for Xbox, and they were all in on ray tracing pretty much from 2016. They wanted it to be in that box for the launch in 2020. So therefore, they went to AMD and said, we need an area efficient ray tracing solution for the next Xbox. They saw the direction of travel, what with working with NVIDIA. Obviously, DXR became a thing. And lo and behold, hardware accelerated ray tracing ends up in PlayStation 5, and early development hardware didn't have it, which kind of suggests this is like a two-way street, right?
Precisely. Exactly what I was thinking. I mean, this is the same song and dance they've been doing for a while now, and I don't really see any reason for them to necessarily change that at this point. There is that theory about using something like ARM in their box, and I guess given the range of devices that could become an Xbox according to the marketing, that could make sense. But I feel like on the main Xbox side, one of the key selling points that they've maintained for a while now is backwards compatibility, and shifting the whole architecture so dramatically would create gigantic challenges, I think, for backwards compatibility, especially with the most recent generation of Xbox software, right? So I mean, it just seems to me like they're going to stick with AMD.